Howdy y'all. For those who don't know, my name is Hunter White. I'm the coordinator for the English Dharma group. And just a little bit about me. I got my undergraduate in philosophy at Southwestern University. I had a focus on moral and ethical philosophy. I went to law school and wanted to practice criminal law. During that time period, I was also a lobbyist for 3 sessions and eventually found my way into prosecution. And I came to Buddhism from actually a college class. I took an intro to Buddhism class in college, really spoke to me. And actually I also took an Asian art history class, and I really fell in love with the imagery of early Buddhism. And so I started reading. My background before coming to Buddhism was Lutheranism. And anybody knows anything about Lutheranism, reading text is sort of the whole point. It's like why Lutherans exist. And so it sort of got drilled into me, and that's why I started reading. And number of years of doing that, I eventually made my way through the Sutta Pitaka of the Pali Canon. So imagine 4 of these and then another one that's like 3 times larger, right? I mean, it's very big. And that's not even all of it. That's 1/3 of it, okay? So it's a lot. But I made my way through that, and it just sort of spoke to me that I enjoy reading the suttas, and so that's what sort of resonated with me. So today I will be talking about the Uposatha. And this is sort of different than some of the other talks I've done, which have been on specific suttas. This one is an actual practice. So this is something that's talked about in the Pali Canon as far as a, not an everyday practice, but sort of a weekly practice that one can partake in. And sort of why one may want to do that. And what this really is relating to is ethics, the precepts. So this talk is called the Uposatha, a day of observance and reflection. So you may ask, what is the Uposatha? So in the suttas, the Uposatha is talked about quite a bit, comes up fairly often. And what it is a day of observance that lay followers can do. Another way to call this is an observance day. And following the Uposatha is relatively simple as far as it goes. You just have to follow the lunar calendar. So the Uposatha days are always on new moons, full moons, and then on quarter moons, so whenever it's at half. So if you ever needed to know what an Uposatha day, like what day you're supposed to do it, very simple, just look in the sky and that'll tell you. So the way that this is practiced is a practitioner will observe the 8 precepts instead of our standard 5. So I know we have a lot of people that have been here before. Pop quiz, what are the 5 precepts? Anybody? Yes.
Refrain from killing, refrain from stealing, refrain from sexual misconduct, refrain from lying, and refrain from intoxicants.
There we go. So our standard ethical things we need to observe. And usually this is pretty simple, right? Like we're not going around killing people, but this does actually, have a deeper practice for us, because that could also mean, observing vegetarianism, not killing other living beings. And these are sort of the ethical guidelines that Buddhism gives us to practice. Well, there's 3 more that one can observe. And the purpose of this is to sort of experience in a small way what a monastic may do. So, as I often do, I try and find good pictures for these. And so this one right here I thought was just perfect if we're talking about the moon, because we have this beautiful moon shot next to this temple that's in Burma. This is a real place. It is a beautiful temple in, I should say, pagoda. And if you do ever get there, you will actually get to see a relic of the Buddha himself. They have one of his teeth. So very cool. So while this is talked about a lot in the suttas, I'm going to use a set of 3 texts which sort of deal with this vaguely chronologically. Anybody that knows anything about the suttas, order is not exactly their strong suit, but in this one we do have 3 suttas back to back that all sort of talk about this. This is all out of the Anguttara Nikaya, so our numbered discourses. What this does is give clarity about how one is supposed to practice the Uposatha and why. And just sort of piggybacking on that beautiful temple from Myanmar, these right here are palm leaf manuscripts, but specifically ones from Burma or Myanmar. They actually have a very, very long tradition of doing these beautiful gold-leafed ones. So I just thought that was fitting since we had that nice shot of a temple over there. So these suttas are all set in a real location. Oh, come on. There we go. So this is taking place in Shravasti, Jedda's Grove, Atapindika's Park, and also a mansion in the eastern part. So Shravasti is right over here up by Lumbini. This is a location, a real location. You can go there. It has the remains of one of the most important and largest monastic complexes that existed in India for early Buddhism. So this set of interconnected suttas is basically instructing one how to practice this, and then also what the benefit is. And then the last one is dealing with a lay practitioner who we will get to in a moment, and why it is that it's important for lay people to do this. And that person is Visakha. I'm going to butcher this last name. I read suttas, but I cannot read Pali to save my life. So just forgive me. I'm going to say Migaramanta. I want to say we're gonna go with that. Visakha. Visakha is a character that we see in the suttas quite a bit. She was a very influential lay follower of the Buddha. She was the foremost of the lay followers in generosity, and was incredibly important in the development of the early Sangha, as she basically got the Buddha lots of patrons, lots of people who were donating to the temples or to the Sangha. She actually dedicated the second largest monastery over there to the Buddha, and just sort of has a very interesting background. She comes up a lot in the suttas, and actually, interestingly enough, while she was a lay practitioner, she also comes up in a text called the Therigatha. So the Therigatha is in the Kundika Nikaya, the minor discourses. The Therigatha is a set of poems from nuns, but this is a lay follower, and she shows up in there. we have just a quick quote from one of her poems here. Do the Buddha's bidding, and you won't regret it. Having quickly washed your feet, sit in a discreet place to meditate. These are short poems, a lot of them, but there we go. That was the one that she has in there. Visakha also comes up numerous times dealing with how lay people should behave, like what's proper actions. In fact, Visakha is the one that gets instruction from the Buddha on how one should behave as a spouse, which is very interesting. And in that one from the Anguttara Nikaya, it's actually fairly simple to be a good spouse, it turns out. You just need to be good to your partner, respect your family, be diligent in keeping your household together, maintain your household staff. I think it was different back in the day. I think people had a lot of staff. I don't know that we do. But if you have staff, be good to them. Be fiscally responsible, follow the 5 precepts, take refuge in the triple gem, and be generous. So if you can do these, you will be a fantastic partner. And given that a lot of these are fairly simple, I think we can all be good partners to our, to our loved ones. Visakha also comes up in a very interesting story that sort of parallels a very famous story from Buddhism. So in this story, Visakha is walking around a village covered in wet clothing. It's raining. And she's very sad about an event that has occurred. And people are telling her you need to take off this, like you need to get out of your wet clothes or whatever. And she goes to the Buddha and she's explaining how she's so upset about this, this tragedy that has befallen her. And the Buddha will ask her, is there any place that you can walk around in this village where you won't be wet? And she's covered in this wet clothing. She's like, no. And she's like, exactly. The world is filled with sorrow. It's just sort of how it is. This sort of parallels a story that, a famous story of a mother who has a dead child. And this story, a mother comes to the Buddha with her dead child and is asking for the Buddha's help. She wants her child back. And the Buddha will tell her, okay, I'll bring your child back. Can you find a place in this village where someone hasn't died before? And she reflects on this and she's like, well, no, in every house somebody has died. And it's like, exactly. This is the way that things are. And this sort of relieves her stress, her sadness about it, truly seeing how things are. So I didn't put up this year's lunar calendar since we're almost at the end of it, but we have next year's up. So as I said, it's very simple to know when the Uposatha is coming up. You just look in the sky, but we also have a nice calendar date. Generally speaking, there's about 4 a month, sometimes 5. Lunar calendar is funny like that. There's a reason we don't use it as our normal calendar anymore. But the other thing that's nice about this lunar calendar is if you follow that lunar calendar, you will also not miss any other real big holidays, since most major Buddhist holidays tend to fall on some kind of lunar phase. So that's all your big ones like Buddhist birthday, Parinibbana Day, Bodhi Day, Vesak, all of those. So before we go to the 8, as you said, we have our 5 precepts. And it's important to know that the 5 precepts, these are not commandments. This is not the Buddha telling you, you shall not do this because reasons. No, this is a prescription of activities that you should refrain from doing, but there's a reason why. Not partaking in these activities will keep you away from unskillful activities. So we can think of things like killing living beings. Okay, well, it's not good to kill people, but it's also unskillful. It will generate negative karma. It will hurt other beings. It'll give you a bad reputation if you're killing other people, that kind of thing. You can also think about something like stealing, same sort of deal. If you're just taking things from people all the time, well, one, society doesn't really work, but also you get a bad reputation. People know, people are going to be clutching their purses when they're around you, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to get that kind of negative reputation around you. You don't want to be harming others like that. This also comes to things like intoxicants. The Buddha had spoken against taking intoxicants because they cause negligence of the mind. So you think about it, you're drunk or something like that, it may be easier to break one of the precepts because you're not exactly in your right mentality. And I also wanted to take this moment because I find this fascinating about language, and also the difference between literal reading and what can be understood about what's really being said. So I have an asterisk next to the fifth precept here. The way that this one is done is I undertake the training precept to abstain from alcoholic drink or drugs that are an opportunity for heedlessness. So the way that the fifth precept translates is samadhya sikkapanda vermani, which would be I undertake the training precept to abstain from, and then we have this fantastic conjunctive word, sura mari maja padme dana, which will literally translate as beer, cider, carelessness, intoxication, and condition, or to put that in a way that is understandable in English, the condition of intoxication and carelessness caused by beer and cider. Now, you may notice that a literal reading of that would mean you could have liquor or you could do drugs. Now, okay, but we understand that the point of this precept is to not partake in things that cause heedlessness, and that can be things beyond that. They didn't exactly have, methamphetamine back in the day, avoid it. It's just one of those things where even though very specifically the sutta is saying beer and cider, what it's really talking about, the deeper meaning here, is to avoid anything that causes negligence of the mind, anything that will cause intoxication. So for the 8 precepts, it is the same as the original 5 with a change to one of them, and then a few more. So we have abstain from taking life, abstain from taking what is not given, abstain from unchastity as opposed to sexual misconduct, abstain from false speech, abstain from intoxicants, which cause carelessness, abstain from taking food at the wrong time, abstain from dancing, music, visiting shows, flowers, makeup, wearing ointments and decorations, and abstain from tall, high sleeping places. So our first precept here, yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, why should we abstain from music and dancing and things like that?
That's a fantastic question. So we'll get to that on the slide, but the general idea is something like music, dancing, entertainment, that kind of thing. It's not that one should abstain from that just on principle, but if you listen to music, if you watch a show, if you are consumed by entertainment, you will form an attachment to or a desire for more of it. So, for example, I don't know about y'all, but there's some television out there that I am just like, I have to see it next week. I will change my entire schedule around to make sure I see this show. And, while that's relatively harmless, that is an attachment. That's a desire that can be negative. You may be giving up other activities to be doing that. And also, it can cause unsatisfactoriness, or it can cause suffering, because let's say your show gets canceled. Let's say this week's program gets delayed. Well, now you're unhappy because, I wanted this entertainment and now it's not there.
So maybe just don't grow too much of an attachment.
That would be the idea. And that's with these observance days. It's supposed to be a day, like a single day a week, where you just are mindful about that and you avoid that. So our first precept here would be to refrain from killing. So the noble disciple reflects thus: as long as they live, the arahants abandon and abstain from the destruction of life. With the rod and weapon laid aside, conscientious and kindly they dwell, compassionate towards all living beings. Today, for this night and day, I too shall abandon and abstain from the destruction of life. With the rod and weapon laid aside, conscientious and kindly I too shall dwell, compassionate towards all living beings. I shall imitate the arahants in the respect, and the uposatha will be observed by me. So that's sort of the idea, is the observance day is a day for you to not just reflect on it, but you're sort of imitating a monastic, one who has gone beyond, by observing these extra rules. So something like this for a practitioner could be very simple. If you're a vegetarian, you probably don't have to worry about things like meat. If you're unfortunately like someone like me who does enjoy meat, this would be a really good day to just don't eat meat. You may not be a vegetarian, but this could be your day to just not do that. Additionally, if you're one that, I don't know, carries a weapon around or something, maybe not the day to do that kind of thing, Basically, it is a day for you to be more conscientious about your relationship to other living beings. Probably not a day to mow the grass because you may hurt a little creature that's out there. Probably not the day to go poison insects or something like that. These are things to avoid. So it's just it's being mindful about your relationship with living beings on that day, more than you may be normally. There we go. As long as they live, the arahants abandon and abstain from taking what is not given. They take only what is given, accept only what is given, and dwell honestly without thought of theft. Today, for the night and day, I too shall abandon and abstain from taking what is not given. I shall accept only what is given, I shall accept only what is given, accept only what is given, and dwell honestly without thoughts of theft. I shall imitate the arahant in this respect, and the uposatha will be observed by me. This is the second factor it possesses. So this is fairly simple. Don't steal. This is a practice that we should all be doing. But you can think about this day in particular to reflect on, I probably shouldn't covet what other people want either. I shouldn't be, jealous of other people's stuff. I should be content with what I have and not trying to, wanting more. Precept 3, as long as they live, the arahants abandon sexual activity and observe celibacy, living apart, abstaining from sexual intercourse, the common person's practice. Today, for the night and day, I too shall abandon sexual activity and observe celibacy, living apart, abstaining from sexual intercourse, the common person's practice. I shall imitate the arahants in this respect, and the apotasa will be observed by me. Okay, so this is fairly simple, right? I think we can all sort of get that. But we do all need to reflect on sort of what sexual misconduct is talking about, because with the 5 precepts, we sort of talk about them and we're like, oh yeah, obviously, you don't sexually assault people, clearly. But it's more than that. It's also about respecting fidelity in relationships. It's about respecting protected classes of people who you shouldn't be having those kind of lustful thoughts for. And so just on that day in particular, just being mindful about those kind of sensual thoughts. Precept 4, as long as they live, the arahants abandon and abstain from false speech. They speak true, adhere to the truth. They are trustworthy and reliable, not deceivers of the world. Today, for this night and day, I too shall abandon and abstain from false speech. I shall speak true, adhere to truth. I shall be trustworthy and reliable, no deceiver of the world. I shall imitate the arahants in this respect, and the apotasa will be observed by me. So, false speech, we all sort of get it. We don't lie. That's the idea. But right speech is more than just not lying. Right speech entails a lot more about how our relationships with other people are with how we speak. We need to be mindful of others. We need to be mindful of the times that we speak. Sometimes telling the truth, which is incredibly important, it's not the right time for it. Sometimes there is a proper time to say things, and it may not be the right time to do it. It doesn't mean that you're lying. It doesn't mean that you're being deceitful, but you're waiting for the proper time for the message to be accepted and conveyed. So this can also be things like refraining from idle chatter. I'm the worst at this, okay? I love gossip at work, I do. But it's a negative thing because it sows division, right? You have people who they gossip, it causes fractures between people, people get upset, and you're hurting other people, and you're also hurting yourself because you get a bad reputation as a gossip, you get a reputation as one that you can't tell them anything because everyone's going to hear it, that kind of thing. So this is a day to reflect on exactly what your speech is. Are you saying what is true? Are you saying what is right? And are you saying this at the correct time? Because while we want to speak truthfully and we want to speak in a way that helps other people, we also need to speak in a way or at the proper time so that they can understand it. Precept 5. As long as they live, the arahant abandon and abstain from liquor, wine, and intoxicants, the basis for heedlessness. Today, for the night and day, I too shall abandon and abstain from liquor, wine, and intoxicants, the basis of heedlessness. I shall imitate the arahants in this respect, and the apotasa will be observed by me. Fairly simple. Abstain from anything that causes heedlessness. The idea with this day is to mindfully reflect on the practice, not let yourself be distracted by anything, whether that be an external factor like entertainment or an intoxicating substance. You're supposed to reflect on the practice itself. Precept 6. As long as they live, the arahants eat once a day, abstaining from eating at night and from food outside the proper time. Today, for the night and day, I too shall eat only, once a day, abstaining from eating at night and from food outside the proper time. I shall imitate the arahants in this respect, and the apotasa will be observed by me. So this goes back to how monastics in India practiced. So there was a thing called alms round. It was literally, you would wake up, you would take your begging bowl, and you would go around from house to house asking for food. You could only eat what was given to you. And then after you got your food in the morning, you'd go back to the monastery or wherever everybody was staying. You would eat, and then you'd spend the rest of the day in reflection. This isn't necessarily something that happens in a lot of places anymore. I know in the US that's probably an untenable thing. But for a practitioner, this could be very simple. Eat your breakfast or eat a big lunch, and then you're done for the day. Typically, the way that I understand this is that the proper time is you're not supposed to eat past noon or solar noon. Put a caveat on this. Currently, the idea is that things like juices, water, that kind of thing are acceptable. So it's not like you're just can't have anything else for the rest of the day, but it's literally food. You're not supposed to eat past a certain time. So this would be a practice of imitating a monastic or a monastic as they were back in the day by just mindfully only having one meal. Precept 7. As long as they live, the Arhants abstain from dancing, singing, instrumental music, and unsuitable shows, and from adorning and beautifying themselves by wearing garlands and applying scents and unguents. That's a fun word, unguents. Today, for the night and day, I too shall abstain from dancing, singing, instrumental music, and unsuitable shows, and from adorning and beautifying myself by wearing garlands and applying scents and unguents. I shall imitate the Arahants in this respect, and the Uposatha will be observed by me. So this is, as we talked about earlier, avoiding entertainment. And the reason why is you don't want to be forming these attachments to pleasurable things, because this can cause us suffering. We may think that, oh, it's just a little TV, it's just music, something like that. But that stimulation can become addicting. It's sort of like you think about your cell phone, okay? I don't know about y'all, but it's fairly hard to not look at your cell phone all the time. And the reason why is you're addicted to the stimulation of whatever it is. Typically, it's going to be entertainment, right? Whether that be some kind of app or game or just the general drama of social media. You are addicted to some kind of entertainment. And on these days, the idea would be to avoid or be mindful of those kind of stimulation and avoid it. And to be honest with you, I think we could all probably use a detox at least for one day a week. I don't know about y'all, but I know I could be off of the Facebook for a week, a day, like that would be good for me. So precept 7, that's really just about avoiding forming these kind of attachments, or at least being mindful of those attachments for at least once a week. Precept 8, as long as they live, the Arhants abandon and abstain from the use of high and luxurious beds. This was the fanciest bed I could find, by the way. I looked through so many beds, y'all. And this was just the fanciest one I could imagine. I may not be very, imaginative, but I was like, that is a fancy bed. It's got the pillow cushions and everything. My goodness. So, they lie down on low resting places, either a small bed or a straw mat. Today, for the night and day, I too shall abandon and abstain from the use of high and luxurious beds. I shall lie down on low resting places, either a small bed or a straw mat. I shall imitate the Arhants in this respect, and the Uposatha will be observed by me. So we think about it as a practitioner. I don't know about y'all, but I don't have a bunch of extra beds. so I can't exactly swap them out. But it can be something about, sort of mindful about where it is you're sleeping. Are you sleeping in just absolute luxury? You got your fanciest comforter, all your silk pillows, everything. No, maybe that day you just use, you're playing cotton sheets or something. Who knows? But that's sort of the idea, is to just be mindful of your surroundings, because we can become addicted to things, spaces. I don't know about y'all, but in the mornings, my bed is the best place in the world, and I don't want to leave it. It's warm, it's soft, and I just don't want to get up. But that kind of attachment can be bad, right? Because now we're like, oh, like, I just really want to be in a very comfortable place. I always want to be surrounded by luxury. I always want to be in this kind of thing. And we can't be, right? I know this for a fact. I was recently on a trip, and being in a hotel room, you really learn how much you love your bed, because you're sleeping on just like hard mattresses, and you're like, man, I want my high luxurious bed. So just sort of being mindful of that, like, hey, I don't want to form these attachments to things, because we're not always going to have them. We're not always going to have the fanciest beds, the nicest sheets, all of that. We need to be accepting of and okay with, not luxury, not the best, just simple. So now we get to our benefit. And you may ask, what was the benefit? What's the point of all of this besides, not forming these attachments and practicing, just being mindful about the practice? The sutta goes on, one should not kill living beings or take what is not given. One should not speak falsehood or drink intoxicants. One should refrain from sexual activity, from unchastity. One should not eat at night or at the improper time. One should not wear garlands or apply scents. One should sleep on a low bed or a mat on the ground. This, they say, is the eight-factored Uposatha proclaimed by the Buddha, who reached the end of suffering. As far as the sun and moon revolve, shedding light so beautiful to gaze upon, dispellers of darkness moving through the filament, they shine in the sky, brightening up the quarters. Whatever wealth exists in this sphere, pearls, gems, an excellent beryl, horn gold, mountain gold, and a natural gold called hataka, those are not worth a 16th part of the Uposatha, complete in its 8 factors, just as the host of stars do not match the moon's radiance. Therefore, a virtuous woman or man, having observed the Uposatha, complete in the 8 factors, and having made merit productive of happiness, blameless goes to a heavenly state. So the way that the sutta reads is that observing these factors, the Uposatha, the 8 precepts, on the breakup of the body after death, one would be reborn in the realm of the devas. Okay, we know different areas one can be reborn in, and observing this properly would lead one to be reborn there. And that's all fine and good for our next life. But in this life, it's a useful practice, because what it does is force you, for at least one day a week, to be mindful of your practice. We try to be mindful all the time. I know I do. But it's hard. The world is very difficult. It's easy to get distracted. It's easy to make compromises. And the Uposatha provides you an anchor of at least once a week to say, I am going to try and reflect on these. I'm going to try and practice. I'm going to try and be mindful of this. Personally, one of the things that I did while practicing this was a day that I would use to read through suttas. This was a day I'd be like, since I'm not watching TV, I'm going to try and read it. I'm going to try and read suttas. When I would be when I do exercises or something like this would be when I'm listening to audiobooks, something like that. Oh, okay. Thank you. I was like, oh my goodness, what is that? But yeah, you can practice this however you think. But what it's really doing you is giving a day to be mindful of your practice and what you can do to, uh, better integrate the practice into your life. And I suppose you also have that nice thing in the back of your mind that if you do this properly, you're going to come back as a deva. So wonderful. That's great. So that is sort of my talk on the Uposatha. And does anybody have any thoughts or questions about this kind of activity? Yes, ma'am.
I just want like an extra reminder because I get confused with that sometimes. What is the Dharma?
Fantastic question. Difficult one. Dharma, probably the most common thing when we're talking about something like the Dharma, would be like the practice itself, the teachings of the Buddha, the way that the Buddha taught us to practice to try and end suffering. So that would be things like the Four Noble Truths, Noble Eightfold Path, the Five Precepts, that kind of thing.
But there's 8 precepts of the Buddha.
Yes, absolutely. And you are correct. There are other precepts that one can observe. Yes, and that's the point of this Uposatha practice is if we're supposed to normally observe the 5, but on these particular days, we're supposed to observe 8, just to be more mindful, to try and imitate like a monk. Any other questions? Any other thoughts?
I'll give you my thoughts
Yeah.
on a couple of those. So the avoiding intoxicants, that's an interesting one, and when it talks about beer and cider, and obviously intent more than that. I think there's a lot that goes into the translation, and sometimes you're getting a translation of a translation and then someone's interpretation of that. But I did read one where it talked very broadly about intoxicants, to the point where if you think about if you've been at a particular event or something, so the atmosphere was just intoxicating, it referred to that as well, because it's just your mind getting caught up in other things. And that then bleeds into the one of the 8 precepts of avoiding singing and dancing and stuff. I mean, I love to go and see live bands.
Okay.
And sometimes you get there and it's just amazing and fantastic, and it's a mind-blowing experience. And I'll guarantee that most of us that have really got into music, you hear something and it can absolutely change your mood. It can like bring you up, it can bring you down, it can change your mindset. And that's one of the things that this avoiding intoxicants, that's why I use intoxicants in quotes, is because you should be avoiding those things as well. Now, for me, no, I'm not going to give up going to see live bands. I'll take the negative karma and still do those things. It's only refrain from or the practice, so I'll accept that. But yeah, so that for me, I found interesting thinking about intoxicants as anything that takes away the clarity of your mind. Because the first 4 of the precepts were fairly well established even before the Buddha's time. But the 5th precept of avoiding intoxicants was kind of like his extra, because we need to have purity of mind for the practice.
I absolutely agree. And actually, I think a wonderful way to understand that would be like you think about our brain chemistry, right? So intoxicants like alcohol or drugs or something like that, it's not really the substance themselves. What it is how it affects our neurotransmitters. So like dopamine, cortisol, that kind of stuff. And music will do that. Dancing will do that. Any kind of activity will affect your brain chemistry. And so I very much agree with you. I think that's very on point, that it sort of bleeds into the intoxicating nature of certain activities that will affect our mind and make us less clear.
I do have a question also.
Yes, ma'am.
When it comes to like murder and killing, of course, no murder and killing, of course, but let's say you're working and you're writing about murder and killing, that's still decent with the toxin and stuff. How would you observe that? If that makes sense.
Oh, so like if your job was to write about something like
Let's
that?
say you work in news and you have to write about that.
Oh.
You also have to edit that. You also have to talk to people who are explaining that. You also have to be around people who are crying, pain, suffering. That is your job. And how would you navigate that if you're supposed to take a moment to take away from that? But that's your job, you know what I mean?
Right. So very much understood. So I would think like something like if your job is like a reporter or something like that, and you have to write about a murder that's occurred, you're not the one doing the killing, so you're fine on the first one, right? But one could, for example, become intoxicated by work. I don't know about y'all, but sometimes work is work. But sometimes work can be fun, right? You can get into a project you're really interested in and be really like connected to or identifying with whatever your work is. That can cause you suffering, because if you do that all of the time, your identity is going to become linked to whatever that work is, and then you're going to form an attachment to it that's negative, because you're not always going to be a reporter. You're not always going to be a writer. You're not always going to be doing this. You're not defined by whatever that activity is, but the more you do it, if you're not mindful of that connection, you may get yourself into a lot of trouble, because you'll be like, the day that you're not a reporter anymore, I don't exist. Like, I don't have an identity. You do. You're not defined by your writing, that kind of thing. But I also think that that is important more broadly for like jobs. So there are certain jobs that we all do that we may be concerned about whether or not we're practicing right livelihood. One of the Eightfold Path teaches us that we need to have the right livelihood so that we're not engaging in these unskillful activities. Well, some of those are easy, right? Like, you're not supposed to sell weapons because that's going to kill people. You're not supposed to slaughter animals. You're not supposed to be a hunter. Okay, that makes sense. I'm not actively killing something. Right, got it. But how does that work if, say, you work for Raytheon and you're one of the war makers who, like, you build the weapons or the systems necessary to make weapons work? Like, well, I'm not making the weapon, I'm making the software that can be used for that. I don't know. You can also think about things like, for example, pollution. Like, okay, so I have to commute to work. I don't know about you or y'all, but if you have to commute to work, okay, even if you have the most wholesome job ever, you are hurting the environment as a whole, even if it's just a little bit, because you're producing pollution. Well, we can't help that. We live in a modern age where that's just the reality that we're stuck with. And I think that's where intention comes into like a sharp focus. What is your intention in doing whatever your activity is? If your intention of, doing your job and your job is positive and has a positive effect, that's the important bit, not the knock-on effect of you may be causing a small amount of damage to the environment. It's something to be mindful of, and it's probably a good thing to be mindful of, but you shouldn't just give up all work and everything, unless you want to become a monk or a nun or something like that, but that's different. But you just can't. That's just not how the world works. But being mindful about that is very important, because being mindful of that will keep you grounded on, is what I'm doing the correct kind of livelihood? Yes, sir.
Just a comment, really.
Yeah.
The precept about not lying. I think that also applies to um, sarcasm, because when I know I have a problem with that, and um, it's a form of lying in a way, because you're not really, saying what you really mean. You're saying the opposite. So there's a lie. Um, so I think it's something to also think about on these days. Try to make ourselves not do that so much.
I couldn't agree more. Yes, sir.
I think that's really interesting you bring that up because I think that, yeah, like sarcasm is a form of false speech. But then you were talking about intention. Like if you're lying, like or not, if you're being sarcastic in the context of like making people laugh, like it's like a joke, I think that's like kind of an interesting, like the intention is to make people laugh and you make a something funny or lighthearted, but then it's like it is life. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting push and pull.
So I think it's interesting because something like sarcasm, sort of a basis for comedy, right? And everyone loves a good jokester and everything, but that could be something like idle speech or idle chatter. You're talking for the sake of talking. You're trying to fill space, and even if it's for you're trying to get a chuckle out of somebody, what's the reason you're actually doing it? Are you cracking jokes because you're just trying to fill the emptiness because you have to focus on something else, or are you trying to really help another individual, and the way that you're doing it, sometimes that's just how people work. Some people really they're really good at saying just a good quip at the right time. That's great, but some people, I don't. Some of the worst comedy that's painful is just people that are constantly cracking jokes, and it's like, this is like inappropriate, and not only inappropriate, it's not funny. So intention, I think, is very important in that. I would agree with you though that sarcasm can very much be a form of lying, and your intention very much matters about that. Because I can say, yeah, that was the best food I've ever had in my entire life, and I put that plate down, crush that right into the trash. Yeah, best food I've had. No, that's lying, right? We had a question in the chat. Quarter moon is referring to a half moon. So I learned this too. I always called it a half moon, but a quarter moon is when the moon is at half. I guess it's a quarter of the moon's whole phase. So yes, that is correct. It's a quarter moon. And yes, false speech includes things like harsh speech, slander, gossip. So harsh speech, I mean, that's pretty simple. Like, don't be calling people names and be rude to people for no reason. That's fairly simple. But also things like slander or divisive speech, we shouldn't engage in the kind of speech that is made to turn people against each other, because doing that sows conflict. It hurts other people and it hurts you, because if you get known as the person that's dividing people against each other, nobody is going to want to be around you. You are going to get a very negative reputation and hurt others. Harry's got a question.
Yes, I know we're almost out of time. This refers to, was it the fifth precept about avoiding intoxicants? And the gentleman who attended live asked a question where you all almost answered my question. But my question is, if I recall you reading the line correctly about that, it says the reason why we should avoid this or that particular substance is they contribute to heedlessness. So, Hunter, I was wondering if, in general, you could give a little more commentary or elaboration of what heedlessness is. And, of course, it implies we should be heedful of something or some things. So if you could, and I have a general idea about this, but if you could also say a brief word about what exactly we should be heedful of, like our ideal state and direction of mind, the things that we really should go through our days and time heeding. Yeah.
Understood. This sorry, I just got a cramp in my leg. Ooh. So heedlessness, we would think about it as a state of being unmindful. So we want to be mindful of our activities, our speech, how it is we interact with others, that kind of thing. And intoxicants can cause us to be not mindful, not in the present, not taking account of how we're behaving or how it may affect others or ourselves. And so the the suggestion or the encouragement to avoid intoxication is an encouragement to maintain mindfulness and to avoid things that may cause you to lose that mindfulness that are outside of yourself, especially things you can control, because you can really control whether or not you're drinking a bottle of alcohol. Like that's fairly simple, but maintaining mindfulness normally, it's still a challenge. I couldn't imagine doing it on hard mode where you're drunk. Like, that sounds horrible. Answer your question, Harry?
Mostly, I still wonder a little bit about what exactly we should heed.
Got it. So we're trying to be mindful of the practice itself. So we're trying to be mindful of our relationships with others, how our speech, our actions, our intentions may be affecting others, and also mindful of the world around us, not attaching to objects, not identifying with objects, not getting caught up in things about the past or speculation about the future. Instead, we're trying to be present and aware, and also aware of how we may affect others.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anything else? Alrighty. Well, thank you all very much. And we will end for the day. If everyone will please stand. Okay. 3 bows to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Thank y'all very much. Y'all have a lovely day.
Thank you.